Hello. Now that we've talked about epithelial tissues and we have had a detailed classification of one type of epithelial tissues, which are the covering and the lining epithelia. The second type of epithelial tissues are the glandular epithelium. So what are glandular epitheliums? The glandular cells or the glandular epithelial cells often lie in clusters and they lie very deep to the covering and the lining epithelium. Further, a gland may consist of either a single cell or a group of cells which secrete substances into ducts, which are nothing but tubes, or onto a surface or into the blood. Thirdly, all the glands of the body are either classified as endocrine glands or exocrine glands. As per your previous knowledge, you might have come across the terms of endocrine glands or hormones which are secreted by the endocrine glands. Now let's understand them in a little more detail. Let's look at the endocrine glands. One of the biggest examples would be thyroid gland. Endo meaning inside and crine meaning secretion. So, in the glandular epithelium, if the secretions will enter the interstitial fluid, which is nothing but the fluid between two cells, and then diffuse directly into the bloodstream without flowing into any kind of cavity or any kind of duct or a tube, those kind of secretions, which are called as hormones, are responsible for regulating many metabolic as well as physiological activities and also maintaining the homeostasis, which is nothing but a harmony between the internal and the external environment. Examples of these type of glands and hormones would be pituitary, which secrete prolactin, or thyroid gland, which secretes thyroxine, and adrenal glands, which secrete adrenaline. This is an image of the thyroid gland, which is located somewhere near our trachea. The other type of glands are the exocrine glands. Exo meaning outside, crine meaning secretion. They are responsible for secreting their products into ducts that are empty onto the surface of a covering and a lining epithelia. So they have this ability to secrete their product into ducts, which are ultimately secreting it onto a surface of the covering or the lining epithelia, such as the skin surface or some lumen of a hollow organ. Biggest example that we are aware of is the skin. These secretions could be anything from your mucus, sweat, oil, earwax, saliva, and digestive enzymes. For example, the sudoriferous glands, which are also called as sweat glands, responsible for secreting sweat, and the salivary glands, which are responsible for secreting mucus. So if I had to classify the exocrine glands, endocrine glands will be delivered or talked about in a separate chapter. But the structural classification of exocrine glands are done into two parts. They could either be a single cell, which is unicellular, for example, the goblet cells, which we talked of earlier, which are responsible for secreting mucus directly onto an apical surface. And the other type are the multicellular, which have many cells, for example, sweat, oil, or salivary glands. Let's talk about the structural classification of the multicellular exocrine glands. Why? Because the unicellular glands are just the goblet cells that we've talked about earlier, which look something like this. When I have taken it in a very high resolution microscopy and I have tried to have the same photomicrograph of a goblet cell in a corresponding diagram, I can very clearly observe the secretory vesicles, which contain mucin, which is nothing but the mucus that it is producing. It has a microvilli on its outer apical surface. It also has a Golgi apparatus, which is responsible for packaging and storing of proteins. The rough endoplasmic reticulum, which has ribosomes for synthesizing the proteins, and a nucleus. So these are nothing but an example of a unicellular exocrine gland, which are the goblet cells. Now let's look at the classification of the multicellular exocrine glands. So the classification goes like this. They've been divided into two categories, whether they are simple glands or compound glands. Simple glands have been further classified into simple tubular, simple branched tubular, simple coiled tubular, simple acinar, and simple branch acinar. All these images have been given in the following slide. They are called as simple glands because they've been classified into two types, either on the basis of their structure or on the type of secretory product. So first let's look at simple tubular. It has got a tubular secretory part and is straight and attaches to a single unbranched duct, for example, glands in the large intestine. Let's look at an image of the simple tubular. This would be a simple tubular where we can see that the purple portion or the lavender portion is the duct and the pink portion is the secretory portion which has been pinched off. So if I had to classify the multicellular glands, they're classified on the basis of two criteria. First, whether the ducts are branched or unbranched. As you can see, this one would be unbranched. And what is the shape of the secretory portion? Whether it is tubular, whether it is coiled, whether it is compound acinar, so on and so forth. So if I talk about, let's say, the simple glands. So the simple glands will be the ones where the duct of the gland will not branch. As we talked of the first example, where the duct does not branch. It is simple tubular. The second type are called as the compound glands, where the duct will branch. For example, the compound tubular. The third type are the tubular glands, which will have glands with tubular secretory parts. For example, simple tubular, simple branch tubular, so on and so forth, where the glands will have tubular secretory products. They will be like tubes. The fourth ones are the acinar glands. Acinar, acin meaning berry. So here they are also called as alveolar glands. They have rounded secretory portions. For example, compound acinar, you can watch that they have got rounded portions. They're not very tube-like, they have got rounded coverings or rounded portions towards the end. And last ones are the tubular acinar glands, which are a combination of both. They also have tubular portions and they also have rounded secretory parts. So let me reiterate, when I have to classify on the basis of structure the multicellular glands, I classify on the basis of two criteria. First, whether the ducts are branched or unbranched, and second, what is the shape of the secretory portion of the glands. So there's simple tubular, simple branch tubular and simple coil tubular. Then there is simple acinar and simple branched acinar. And then I come to the compound category. So there's compound tubular, compound acinar and compound tubular acinar. The same things have been mentioned over here with suitable examples. If I look at simple glands, simple tubular examples are glands of the large intestine. Simple branch tubular examples are gastric glands. Simple coil tubular examples are sweat glands. Simple acinar examples are glands of the penile urethra. Simple branched acinar examples are sebaceous glands. Compound tubular examples are bulbourethral Cowper glands. As the name suggests, compound tubular, so they are bulbourethral Cowper glands. Compound acinar examples are mammary glands. And compound tubular acinar examples are acinar glands of the pancreas. I request you all to take some time, write down each of these glands individually, draw their structures and try to classify them bit by bit. The last type of classification of the multicellular exocrine glands is on the basis of their function. So on the functional classification, the multicellular exocrine glands have been divided into three parts. First are called as the merocrine glands. Merocrine glands or merocrine glands, mero meaning a part. Examples are the salivary glands and the pancreas. So what happens in merocrine secretion? This is a typical cell where you can observe that there's a nucleus, there's a rough endoplasmic reticulum which is synthesizing the proteins. So in a merocrine secretion, they're going to synthesize the proteins on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. From there, the proteins will get processed, stored, packaged by the Golgi complex and then ultimately released from the cell in the form of secretory vesicles, and the process will be called of exocytosis. So secretion via exocytosis of a part is done by merocrine glands or merocrine secretion. Example are the salivary glands and the pancreas. The second type of secretion is called as the apocrine secretion, done by the apocrine glands. Apo meaning from. An example are the mammary glands. In this case, a portion of the cell will get pinched off. So in apocrine glands, they accumulate their secretory product. At the apical surface of the secretory cell. Then that portion of the cell will pinch off from the rest of the cell to release the secretion. The remaining part of the cell will repair itself and repeat the same process. So in this case, a certain portion gets pinched off and the rest is released from the remaining cell. Example is the mammary glands. The third type of class or third type of cells or exocrine cells are called as the holocrine glands. Holo meaning entire. In holocrine secretion, what basically happens is the cells will accumulate the secretory product in their cytosol. Then, as the secretory cell will mature and it will ultimately rupture and it will become the entire secretory product. So what happens is that everything that is getting secreted becomes part of the cell and the entire cell itself gets secreted. So the mature cell will die and become the secretory product, and that cell is getting slugged off and a new cell is getting replaced in its place. For example, sebaceous glands of the skin. So with this, we come to an end of the functional classification of the multicellular exocrine glands. Now, take a pause here and try to answer the following questions. Can you describe the various layering arrangements and the cell shapes of the epithelium? Can you characterize the common types? What are the commonalities between all the epithelial tissues? Then, how is the structure of each epithelial tissue related to its function? Further, where are the endothelium and the mesothelium located? What is the difference between endocrine and exocrine glands? And lastly, name and give examples of the three functional classes of exocrine glands. I hope you all have understood all the points and are able to come up with suitable answers for these questions. With this, I complete the epithelial tissue portion. The next series of lectures will be on connective tissue followed by muscular tissue. Thank you very much.